See how long it takes for that thing to go up. What's up, everybody? Sorry it took so long. My internet has went out, so I'm actually doing this through cellular right now. So I live out on a farm, so the reception is not that great, so I apologize now if the clarity of this video ends up sucking, because yeah, I live out on a farm. So unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do exactly what we do. I'm going to have to maneuver and answer questions here on the phone, which is slightly annoying, but it is what it is. What did I miss? Okay. So, what up, Bioshock? I appreciate you, brother. So, if I haven't really talked about it yet, and you guys haven't seen in the description, which the description should be there, I am flying out in the morning to go to Orlando, and I am going to be the next guest on the Tier 1 podcast with Brent Tucker. We are going to record Tuesday, and then the episode will be shortly up after that. And we're specifically going to do a lot of focus on Iran. So I'm excited about that. Me and Brent have been looking forward to this. We've been planning this for ever since this whole thing kicked out. Brent reached out to me because we'd already been in communication about some other stuff prior. And then, Brent reached out to me like right after this Iran stuff kicked out, and right after I released that video about my comparison of Iran to Iraq and Afghanistan, and the two reasons why that this could actually work this time. And so he reached out to me after that, and then basically said we should do a podcast together. So yeah, flying down there tomorrow and recording Tuesday as of right now, and then it should be out a couple of days after that. It will probably be featured on his he'll post it, and then on Thursday when he does lives on Thursdays, there'll be a Q&A for everything that we talk about there. So, Suga, thoughts on how long the Iran conflict will last? That is a good question. It depends. There's a couple scenarios here. If Americans do not put boots on the ground and we rely completely on the Iranians to take back their country, and the Iranians do not take the opportunity or are not able to, it then depends on our resolve on how much do we just rely simply on the Iranians taking it back. And if they fail, then the question is, what does the U.S. do after that? Like, what does Trump and his administration do after that? And that's the real question. And to be honest, I don't know the exact answer to that. Obviously I'm not in anymore. I'm retired. So I'm not exactly sure how this administration feels about this situation. I know that they would like for the Iranians to take back their country, but based off of, you guys heard me do the video about the opposition groups, they're struggling to even do anything. They lack coordination, they lack cohesiveness because they're at odds with each other. And while the Iranian people are really, really motivated about this, and everybody's celebrating, there's a lot of work that has to be done. And, for anybody who doesn't know, that the Iranians have shut off all the internet because they know that the threat to their their regime is the population of Iran itself. So they're trying to cut Iran off of the people of Iran for off what's going on for the world. So it's harder for us to coordinate with them. And so the regime, the Islamic Republic, is doing their best to keep for the population of Iran from rising up. So, and cutting off the internet and keeping them under house arrest. There's reports of people who have escaped that they're basically keeping everybody in their homes, and anybody who comes out, they're shooting them. So, yeah. JQ1610, what is the difference between RRC and ISA? The simplest way I can put it, RRC is like sort of like a tier 1 tactical reconnaissance unit, and ISA is it's a much bigger organization, and they do tactical reconnaissance, but they also do clandestine covert operations. So if you had to think about, they're more like the CIA. That's what ISA is closer to. RRC mostly does like more tactical type of reconnaissance intelligence. ISA does some tactical, but they concentrate on the clandestine and the covert side of things. Exalted Boone, what's up, man? Of course you can. I don't know if I've seen you in quite a second. Krav Maga Army combatives. I think Army combatives has got like a good foundation. As far as like the jujitsu and stuff. I think Krav Maga, there's some good foundations to it, but I do think that Army combatives does lend more to the actual jujitsu side of things, and it's better for things that happen on the ground. And a lot of combat that ends up in hand-to-hand in the modern era ends up on the ground. So I think that just in general, jujitsu is really good. But remember, there's 3 different levels to Army combative. There's 1, 2, and 3. And actually 3, if I remember correctly, 3 actually institutes like stick fighting and other things like that. Rough Rider 1167, drop some Stoic wisdom on us. All right, I got you. So there is, if anybody who knows who Carl Jung is, and Carl Jung is one of the things he's famous for saying a lot of things, is that life starts at 40, and everything else before that is just research. And that definitely resonates with me because I've definitely made a lot of mistakes in my life, and I probably could be, if I didn't make those mistakes, could be like in a better position, could be more successful and everything like that. And so it's easy to sit and live in regret, like, oh, if I'd done this or I'd done that, I could be here. But I know that I would not have been the person that I am today, the quality of person, at least from a character standpoint of view, and my resilience wouldn't be as high if I had not went through those failures. So that it reminds me that like I'm on a path, and every failure happens to me is something that makes me better. And now that I am 41, and it makes me definitely feel better about, like, I feel like I've hit this point in my life where I know what I'm doing and I know what my purpose is. And that excites me because I really just feel like the last 40 years have been research, and I can take a lot of what I learned, and obviously we're going to keep learning as we go forward, but allows me to go into the future with more sure of myself and everything like that. Let's see. Suga, best cardio advice? It depends honestly, cardio, if you're not specifically training for something, I usually will do 2 things. I either do 10 minutes on the Stairmaster, or I will do like 20 to 30 minutes on a maxed incline treadmill. But if you're training for something, depending on what it is, like if you're training for rucking do rucking. If you're training for a triathlon, bike and swim. Swimming is an awesome workout. Two reasons. One, it incorporates multiple different muscles, your back, your legs, uh, your arms, everything like that. And because you're in the water, it's very low impact. Because anybody who runs quite a bit, your legs are going to break down a little bit. There is a lot of impact when it comes to running, especially if you do it quite a lot. Swimming is definitely lower impact, and you work a lot more muscles when you do swimming. So it's definitely a better form of cardio. It's probably one of the best forms of cardio. What are some of your favorite Stoic readings? I'm in the middle of second reading of Meditations. Beer Shark. Honestly, I think a kind of a modern day, if you have not read The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins, I feel like she's probably one of the closest things to somebody who's written a book that is very close to the concepts of Stoicism. Because, her concept is basically let people, which is very similar to Stoicism and Marcus Aurelius, which is don't worry about things you can't control, which is the same thing. She's like, let them, right? She has there's a second half to the book, which is the first is just like, let them. Like if someone doesn't want to be your friend or they don't want to put in time, let them. If someone wants to, talk shit about you, let them, whatever. But the other part is, the second part is, if I remember correctly how it's phrased, it's let them, and then let you do the things. Basically, you go, the things that you want to do, just go do them. Don't wait for anybody. If people don't want to hang out with you, go do something else. Take the things that you can control. Worry about that, which is you can't control other people's actions. And if you want to go do something, you don't have anybody to go do it with, go do it. So so that's a pretty decent one. And obviously it's a really good read, and plus she uses a lot of experiences, which I think a lot of people can resonate with, especially people with families. RPSM3IU, if ISA was a video game, would it be Splinter Cell? No, it's not that cool. Those style of missions, it's not that sexy. You're out by yourself doing operations, trying to gather intelligence in many different forms, and unfortunately, in real life, things do not happen that sexy. Are there people that do that? Yes, but very few people do that. Snapshot Sniper, bro, I appreciate you. Anybody who can ever confuse you for Chuck Norris, you're all right in my book, my friend. So when you worked alongside with the CIA, did you work with normal line officers, case officers, paramilitary case officers? So typically the people in the paramilitary side of things are not really case officers. There's the case officers, and then there's the paramilitary guys. They don't really, they do two different jobs, if you will. There are some people who were case officers, and then they can go to the paramilitary side. But typically, especially the paramilitary guys, most of the paramilitary guys are not even full agency members. They're usually contractors. And it's a very different life from the paramilitary versus the case officers. But yeah, they do two separate jobs, and they're separate. Because let me back that up. So there's two sort of paramilitary organizations, if you want to use that term in the CIA. You have GRS, which is essentially it's your protection and your transportation guys. They're the ones who take case officers to and from meetings, and they're assigned to their protection and transportation. Ground branch, which is kind of like your black side of things, whatever you want to, Hollywood thing you want to call it. Those guys are not case officers, or not currently. And those are the ones that I know. Most of them are contractors. and they do it through, and they're not full agency members. And I think even John Kirikow even talked about this as well, about how they're almost all contractors. It seems like the two religions that are at each other, the beliefs before anything else. Americans are worried about geopolitics. That makes sense. It seems like the two religions that are at each other that have beliefs before anything else. Which two religions are you talking about, Exalted One? Have you used peptides? I have not. I see it on the internet. I have not. I haven't really dived into the research about it. I'm kind of like old school. I just do protein and creatine. Have you ever suffered from depression or any negative issues from trauma? Yes, quite a bit actually. I honestly had never experienced depression until I was in flight school, and then when I did, and I went into a pretty big state of depression. And one of the reasons why I didn't deal with it is I'd never dealt with depression before, and I was 33, 34 years old, dealing with depression for the first time. Honestly, I didn't really know how to handle it. So, but luckily, which, for anybody who doesn't know, that depression where I ended up hitting rock bottom in flight school was actually where I almost committed suicide. And obviously I was able to come back from that. And that was sort of like the defining moment, which sort of led me on this path to, through like Stoicism and all different things, to sort of become the character that I am today. And which is one of the reasons why I've chosen this channel to be of value added to people, was because I want to take the lessons that I've learned and the difficulties I have, and I want to be in the service of other people. And that's my motivation based off of that. Sire 33K, how good of a shooter are you? I can hold my own. Am I as good as a Delta Force guy or SEAL Team 6? No, I am not. I don't spend as much time. I don't train to the level that they do. There's a reason why they're the best at that particular job, is because they train for it every single day. Like, for example, if you take a Green Beret team maybe shoots like once a month. They might go to the range like once a month. Maybe getting ready for deployment, they'll go more often than that, but they really don't shoot as often as you do. But SEAL Team 6 and Delta Force, their assaulters and their guys, they shoot every single day. So if you think about a skill and you train on it every single day, versus like Green Berets who train at it maybe like once a month, maybe more, maybe twice at the most, you can see the difference, how they get to the level that they do. $34 and dealing with it his first time, still on. So you're still planning to do the 18 X-ray program, correct? Who are the guys who do the Splinter Cell shit? That would the closest thing, and actually I think if I remember correctly, Splinter Cell, Sam Fisher, if I remember correctly his name, Sam Fisher is CIA. So, like, for anybody who doesn't know that there's a such thing, and John Kirikow has talked about this as well. There's been a couple people, and they've talked about the kill list, which every Tuesday, a group of members from the White House and a group of members of the intelligence community meet, and then they have a list of people. Well, they also have lawyers, and they meet together and they decide who essentially they're going to assassinate this week. And majority, it can be done by a number of different organizations, but usually, depending on the situation, because there's different authorities between, like, the CIA has different authorities than, say, like Delta, because Delta falls under the Department of Defense, which has its own authorities. I would say a lot of that gets carried out by the agencies. Depending on the level of what needs to be done. It all depends on the mission. It's like all these organizations, they're like tools. You use a tool, you pick a certain tool that works for a certain situation. Suga, do you know when you're gonna go out? Like when you're planning to um, when you actually like, what is it they're doing before you go to basic? And obviously you're gonna go to AIT and then SFAS, but it's the civilian. I forget what the acronym is for it. Where they kind of give you an experience of SF stuff before you even join. I forget what it's called. I saw a documentary on it. SFRE, that's right. Is that? I bet you it is. Well, I'd look it up on the internet, but my internet doesn't work, so it is what it is. Stands for, if I had to guess, we're guessing an acronym: Special Forces Readiness Event. Am I correct? Bags under my eyes are fucking ridiculous today. Rough Rider, what are your goals now that you're out of the military and focused on civilian life? So right now I am trying to, so my goals are, and I've talked about this before, is try to see how far I can get this whole thing to work, the whole Stoic Viking, adding value to other people through social media, because I think there's a couple different failings. You have the mental health, and the physical health side of things. You obviously help people to, at least through my experience of how to be as well-rounded as sort of like a full spectrum athlete, which is kind of like the way that I look at things as far as athletics go, and then the mental health part of things, because I feel like people don't really talk about that. And then also the other part is we actually deal with a lot of the negative vet bro drama, and I am trying to be as positive as possible and sort of perpetrating what I think is the right way, that people who are content creators who former military, how they should act, which is not tearing other people down, and honestly not even focusing on my military service, but focusing on the value that I can add, like the service to other people. And then also the other part, which I kind of recently brought in, is the one of the other issues is we have obviously a super divided country. It's very divisive politically in the United States, throughout the world. And for the same reasons that we have issues in mental health, we have politically, which is people don't have good faith conversations or debates. And one of the reasons I started this geopolitical series, which is sort of evolved into, is trying to understand things from an apolitical standpoint of view. Which I think by doing that, we can, by just looking things at from history and a analytical sense and not bringing politics into it, we can start to have conversations again about things without using buzzwords and other sorts of language and vocabulary that just immediately, like as soon as you're talking to somebody who may be on the other side, already just shuts down and stops listening to you because you come at it from a intellectually disingenuous statement or question. So combining those three things and just trying to perpetrate or project a positive way of talking about things that people don't necessarily want to talk about, but do it in a way where we can have that conversation, both in mental health and even like understanding the world geopolitically, without having any really divisive politics involved. So long story short, that's basically what I'm trying to push. And that's what I kind of use all these podcast appearances that I'm having. And luckily, like the first two that I had with the Team House and the Team Room, which are obviously, those guys are both former Green Berets. Obviously, we talked about my service, the uniqueness of the unit I came from, but also that investigation that I was involved with. But luckily, a lot of them, all of my next podcast that I'm going to, we're talking about the things that I really want to talk about, which is the mental health, the improving the vet community, especially from a content creator standpoint of view, and then also talking about geopolitical things, understanding them without going down the divisive route. So looking forward to that, how much I can push that. and then, just try to add value to people's lives, be in service of other people, because I feel like that's where my knowledge is best used at this point. So see if we can make that happen. Have you worked with the British SRR? I'm impressed that they claim a lot of British influence from you. All first for our British cousins. If we come correctly, is SRR the one that claims? Because I've heard the term, like there's a British version of the ISA in England. So is that what the SRR is? I recently saw a documentary on the CIA rendition in Italy. Seems like pretty splinter cell. They definitely do some splinter cell stuff. The agency definitely can get up to some stuff. They definitely have the authorities. They're one of the few organizations that do have the authorities. So like when these weekly kill lists come out, occasionally they might get Delta, SEAL Team 6, maybe some other organizations involved, but I would say that the agencies, the three-letter agencies, definitely do a lot of it. And I would say that the CIA probably does. Obviously, coordination, there's a lot of air assets, drones, strikes, stuff like that, but usually are then set up by a collaboration of intelligence assets who are on the ground to essentially accomplish these kill lists every week. Did you fly in the 160th, and how many flight hours? I did not fly in the 160th. I was recommended to me not to actually go to the 160th, but I do have a couple hundred hours. So, one of these days I'll get up to one of my goals is obviously to hit over 1,000 and have my own private plane, have my own private helicopter that I can fly on my own. Because I don't plan on going to the airlines or anything like that, but we'll see. Do you ever see a small piece of intel end up changing a much bigger operation? Have I ever seen, if you break it down to the context of, if I'm doing an operation and we have a concept of what everything else is going in, and suddenly we receive a piece of information, and then that puts a stop on the whole operation, yes, we have. I was involved in one operation where we were about to go hit a house, and we've been working on this particular target for months. We've been trying to narrow down a group of guys who are part of the same cell, and they were all waiting for them to go to a meet so we get them all at once. And they finally were about to meet, and we were getting ready to hit them. And then we got a call from one of our sources that the meeting was actually a trap, and they were actually feasting us false information. And luckily, one of the sources got wind of it and was able to get in contact with one of our to us, was able to get in contact just to let us know that the meeting was actually a trap. And so we canceled the mission, and then we adjusted from there. So yeah. And you honestly, especially when we're about to go on hits or assaults or go hit a target, we are looking up at the intel until the very last second, because you never know when you might get something that can change. Especially multiple times in my career have I been involved in some sort of hitting a target, and it has been a trap. That is actually a very common thing, because they know how we operate. William Barry, I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm just trying to, and also I really don't plan on, if I make, through views and brand deals and everything like that, like donations, if people want to participate in, donating money as I'm going through this process, cool, awesome. But I'm not going to put any of this really behind a paywall. I plan to do this all for free. If people like it, cool. If I can help, that's what we're all about. Service to other people, adding value to other people's lives. That's, trying to leave a mark in this world of just making it better than how we found it. That's really just the concepts we're trying to do, and just, and then just being positive. You know, there's so many people out there nowadays, especially in the vet bro community, who are being so fucking negative, just fucking trashing on each other, just looking like, oh my God, stolen valor here, stolen valor there. Like, oh, this person said that they did this, and you know, I saw him do that. Like, it's just ridiculous. And you know, and then also, like, yeah, cool, you did your military service, but are you more than that? Are you a good person? Are you somebody who's good to follow? Just because you did something cool in the military doesn't mean we should follow you or listen to you. You know, do you have a good character? So that's me standing on my soapbox. Do you have a spicy insight on the DC airport crash? No, not really. Other than it was definitely the helicopter's fault, helicopter pilot's fault. But the fault goes actually deeper than that. The people who planned that mission, who allowed it to happen. So typically, when you're flying in a Black Hawk and you're doing night operations, the two pilots who are under night vision goggles, they have crew members. And typically, when we run operations at night in the Black Hawks, we like two guys to be in the back, two crew members, because there's two pilots, but we only have about we can't see more than 180 degrees, right? But with night vision goggles, it's actually even less than. It's probably 160 degree field of view, because I can't see what's past my 9 o'clock if I'm the pilot in the left seat. And so with the crew members who sit in the back, and they actually are facing out perpendicular, they're actually facing out the side. They're the ones, like if we go to make a turn, they're the ones we say clear left, and they're the ones who look out the aircraft physically and they make sure that it's clear. So the fact that they were doing a night operation, it was actually, and also it was a check ride for, you know, both of them are actually very young pilots. And they did not have two guys, they only had one, which means they only had coverage out one side of the helicopter. We usually don't run night operations, especially in busy areas like the airport, with only one crew member in the back. So honestly, whoever approved that mission and allowed them to do that check ride, also because both pilots were pretty young, even the guy who's the pilot in command, he didn't have that many hours for a pilot in command. It was very low, actually. So there was a lot of issues there's probably like 13 things that went wrong that night. And if just one of them would have been changed, maybe everybody would still be alive, but that's just not the case. What's your dream airplane to own? I don't know, something like you know, obviously, who doesn't want to be like Tom Cruise and like fly like legitimate fighter jets? You know, because I didn't do that. Would I have liked to if I could go back in time? The one thing that I'd probably change about my career, if I was to do it anything differently, would probably be like go to the Naval Academy, become a naval aviator, and then like fly like F-18s or F-35s, or go to the Air Force and try to fly F-22s. You know, what's cooler than flying a fucking badass fighter? You know, be like my hero Tom Cruise, just slightly taller. Fighter jets, especially the F-35, because I know that their helmet system incorporates all the different cameras like the bottom. They do. Helicopters do not have 360 degree view. It's actually very limited. And pilots, we don't even wear like panoramics. We're just using some pretty nice like binocular night vision goggles. And our limited, I would say at night you have about 160 degree view. Probably even less than that, because the guy on the right side or the guy on the opposite side of the cockpit is actually blocking your view. So you probably have close to like 120 field of view, 120 degree field of view. But between the two of you, you cover about 160 degrees. And then that's what your crew members in the back are for. At least that's how it is in a Black Hawk. Okay. So tonight we're actually going to do this is going to be one of the shorter lives, because I have two things. So one, I actually fly out early in the morning to go down to Orlando to essentially go do the podcast with Brent Tucker, the Tier 1 podcast. But I also need to do a video tonight. I actually need to record it. And I need to record it tonight, and I have to record it before I leave. So I can only stay on so long. Did the job permanently change how you see the world or how you trust information? Yes, in a way. I am definitely more skeptical. When you see the shenanigans that go on, not only in the government, but in these intelligence agencies and at like, the highest levels of the special operations and the CIA, the NSA, you learn that there's a lot of disinformation, which is done on purpose. And, especially from a standpoint of view that a lot of us, especially who are Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, and a lot of, especially the Iraq veterans, is we know that we were lied into that war. So I think it's good to have a healthy skepticism, especially when it comes to your own government. But I think it's good just to have a healthy skepticism when it comes to life. But I definitely, after the things that I have done and things that I've seen other people do, and I've seen the agencies and I've seen SOFT do, do not trust everything that you see, because some of it is done deliberately just to mislead you. Sometimes for good reasons, sometimes not so good reasons. What motivated you and gave you the determination to do the work? 0Z294. Are you talking about the work in the military I did, or the stuff I'm trying to accomplish now? Just clarify that for me. 0Z294. John W. 1958. My girlfriend of a couple years just broke up with me military stuff. Any advice? So whenever you end a relationship, think of it, even if it like did not go the way, everything is a lesson. And everything is, and if it's not meant to be, like, just move on. And I know that's like sometimes harder said than done, but if you just realize that everybody is put in your life to teach you something. And as they say, you learn more from failures than they do successes. And unfortunately, you learn more from toxic people and people who, use you or abuse you than you do. But that's only if you look at it critically and honestly and realize that, one, what this person did, but then also, how did you put yourself in that situation? So you have to look at it from both sides. Don't just 100%, even if that person is the one who screwed up, there is certain percent of like, how did you put yourself in that situation, and how can you sort of prevent it from happening again, and then just move on. You're wiser, which then makes you stronger as a person. And this experience, if you allow it and you frame it properly, can help you to be more successful in choosing your next partner. The military. Do you believe that they're lying to us in their Iran war like Iraq? No, actually I don't. I actually think that we're, as far as I can tell, just because I did work this target set for over 10 years, so I know a lot about what's going on in the country, or what has been going on in the country, and almost everything that Trump and Hegseth and Marco Rubio have talked about, Secretary of State, Secretary of War, is a lot of what goes on in that country. So, and the fact that we are trying actively not to put boots on the ground is also another big sign, because if we were, these are all lessons learned. The Iraq, one of the reasons that, we came up with this reason was so how we could get into the country, right? And the fact that we're actively trying not to get into the country means that we're, at least at this state of time, at this point of time, we are being told the true majority of the truth. Like, they're not going to tell us all the truth. That's never going to happen. But yeah. After studying for targets long, did it ever change how you think about how people join Sorry. JQ1610. After targets for so long, did it ever change you think about why people join violent groups in the first place? Yes. So I think when you're growing up, right, and you see these things on movies and TV, you think that the people who get in these groups are inherently evil. And there are people who are just downright evil. But I would say that that's the exception rather than the rule. Most people are doing through what they've learned in their environment, their experience, what they think is right. So some people are manipulated to that point, but they generally believe that they're doing the right thing. And one thing that we've learned through, especially the global war on terrorism, is that when you kill one terrorist, a lot of times because they're a brother or cousin or somebody, and their cousins who may have been on the fence about joining the cause, and suddenly you've killed their family member, you may kill one terrorist, but you may create 5 more. So thinking about when you're trying to essentially eliminate target cells or organizations, how do you do it in a way that it's not like a hydra where you cut off one head and then like 3 more grow in its place? So I think that especially at the beginning of the global war on terrorism, we weren't really thinking about this as much, and that's what kept happening. But I do think that nowadays a lot of the, especially in the special operations community, we do think about that, and it changes how we do targets sometimes, because we try to do it in a way where if we take out one target, we don't create multiples and make it essentially the situation worse. So mainly, Mike, it's not a war, guys. It's a preemptive defensive action against potential imminent threat. That's definitely one way to look at it. There's 2 parts to this, right? There's that, which is, he's not wrong. It is trying to protect us from them continuing their missile ballistic programs, continuing other programs. They also have more conventional programs that could be a threat to not only Israel but other assets, U.S. assets, allies' assets in the areas, because they are in a bit of a military buildup, or were before this. But there is a secondary goal, because you have to remember that Iran controls multiple different proxy groups. You got Hezbollah, Hamas. A lot of ways they control the Iraqi government. They are heavily influenced. And if you were to take out the IRGC, the Islamic Republic and the IRGC, a lot of these groups would lose a lot of their funding, and it would create a new level of stability in the region that we have not seen in decades. So that is also an added benefit of getting rid of the Islamic Republic. And then also there's the part where these people are being murdered. These people are being butchered. Just like a couple weeks ago during protests, they murdered, 32,000? I think that was the figure I last saw. It might have been more, but I think the last, I've seen a couple different numbers, but I think somewhere over 30,000 was how many were killed in the protest a couple weeks ago. Or I think it's about a month ago now. I forget exactly which date. So, and these people have been asking for a long time for our help. One of the reasons we haven't done it is because we were hesitant, because we don't want to make the same mistakes we made in Iraq and Afghanistan. Beer Shark, what advice would you give a civilian looking to get into intelligence work? Languages. Languages. And then especially if you want to do human intelligence, reading books of how to interact with people, like Dale Carnegie's book, which is it's like how to make friends and people like you. Books like that, because a big part of SIGINT intelligence is like the 2 main big ants, right? There's so many different types of intelligence, but the 2 biggest ones are like human and SIGINT. SIGINT, there's kind of like anybody can really learn SIGINT. Human does require a level of personality. And you are one, not only will you be more successful if you learn how to interact with people, how to read people, but that like helps you, it helps you in the intelligence side of things, but also will help you in pretty much any job, because 90% of every job, every career that you have is learning how to deal with people. And like probably the other 10% is the actual physical job itself. So learn languages and learn how to interact and deal with people, how to communicate, how to read them. Like there's so many books on this. Those are the two things. If you do that, you'd be extremely successful in the intelligence services. Have you ever seen Life as a Special Operations YouTube channel and thoughts? I actually have not seen that, Suga. Suga, send me, when you get a chance, send me, because I know you've got my Instagram, send me a link to it when you get a chance on like a DM. I'll definitely check it out. In your experience, so JQ1610, in your experience, do intelligence failures happen more because of information was missing or because people misunderstood the information they already had? It's a great question. The answer is yes. It's both, really. Because majority of the time, it's the information we're missing. Because you got to think about it, like there's stuff happening all the time. You know, there's 8 billion people doing things. It's really not that easy. Like people think that we gather up all this intelligence and we know everything. We do a good job. We do better than in probably any other country intelligence service. Like really nobody can match us because they don't have the level of funding, the level of resources that we do. And we catch quite a lot. But we catch very little when you think about in the grand scheme of things, about 8 billion people communicating every single day, doing nefarious acts, because there's a lot of people out there. So majority of the stuff is because we miss it, right? Because it's really hard to gather that much information. But definitely people do misunderstand information. And then what that ends up doing is if you misunderstand the information, that could actually lead you down a rabbit hole in an opposite direction. And you actually, because you think if something is going, you're looking at it a certain way, which is the wrong way, another piece of information that may came up and you may immediately dismiss it because it doesn't go inside with what you're thinking. Because even people who are intelligence analysts and operatives, they will occasionally let their confirmation bias get to them because they're like, oh, I'm really close to getting this target. And I get this piece of information that says, actually, you're not even looking in the right place. They'll dismiss it. But like, no, that's just misinformation, or that doesn't apply. And they'll come up with some excuse and they'll keep down this road when that actually might have been the real intelligence. And you actually then should have realized, like, hey, this is a piece of intelligence that changes what we were doing. We were actually making a mistake prior. And now we need to readjust. We need to pivot. So that does happen. So when you are in this business, you need to be extremely skeptical and you need to keep your confirmation bias out of interpreting, analyzing all intelligence. That's the best way to do it. It's not easy. Don't overcomplicate it, basically, as our friend Higher Bonus would say. How to Win, yes, there you go, John. Yes, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Yeah, it's a great book. There's so many, like 48 Laws of Power, also a great book. To learn how to deal with people. Do you think China will become involved in military now that we're squeezing their oil? No. China, you have to remember what China does not, I know that there's a lot of talk about Taiwan and conventional. China does not want to enter in a conventional war against us. That's not how China plans to take over the world. China wants to take over the world through economic and political means. And if they can do that without ever firing a shot, that's what China will do. That's what China wants. So it's especially with all the Arab countries that are now involved, it's a zero-sum game for China. Like they get zero benefit of putting their neck out for Iran at this point because of, Iran, it still amazes me that, you have US and Israel attacking them, and then and how they retaliate, they start sending missiles at like how many different Arab countries who weren't even involved, and which these countries were already not a fan of them, And so it just gave them an excuse to now join. And now we have this coalition with the Islamic world against, the Islamic Republic. So, China's not going to get involved. There's nothing. They would lose way more than they would gain by trying to keep this from happening. So, sup, Corey Ferguson? Hey, Corey Ferguson, I appreciate that, brother. I'm glad you liked that interview. Jack Murphy's awesome, man. It was really awesome to get to sit down and talk to him. Especially when I learned later out Jack Murphy's a big nerd like me. We both apparently we both paint miniatures, so we big nerds out here. Was there ever a moment where you realized the entire picture of a situation was different from everyone thought at first? Yes, and that is a JQ. That is a very hard pill to swallow when you realize that you have been looking in the wrong direction the entire time, and that is probably the hardest time it is to accept. But when you start to do that and you accept, like, hey, I was looking in the wrong direction this entire time, you get better at it. Like, just trust me. Like, if you ever hear something, like, just stay away from your confirmation bias, or just acknowledge that it's there, so that way you're able to look at the intelligence and then try to look at everything. Be your own devil's advocate, if you will, if that makes sense. I'm finished. Paul, I'm 335. I'm finishing my language course here in Monterey, and I'm interested in Delta or ISA. What is the difference between them? And do you know anything about the Great Skills program? Okay, all right, Paul. It's a great question, everybody. I'm gonna put some knowledge on you right now. All right, so first of all, while I'm doing this, Paul, tell us what language you're doing at DLI. But anybody who's listening, I'm gonna save everybody a world of hurt. Anybody who's ever interested in this, if you're a linguist and you're interested in these programs, whatever you do, stay away from Great Skills. I mean, as far away as you can. That organization is the biggest disappointment ever. All right, and I'm gonna give it to you. So one, if you ever met somebody who's in the Great Skills program, there's never anybody who liked it. Everybody is extremely disappointed. Right? So Great Skills would like to be like the ISA, but there's two reasons that they cannot. One, they don't have the funding. Two, they don't have the authorities. So this is a program. Okay, so there is one exception to the Great Skills. So there's 5 different branches to the and there's different types of intelligence, right? The only decent one is if you want to do their human intelligence route, because they actually send their human guys to the farm. So if you can't get into ISA or you can't get into Delta and you're a human guy, like they will actually, you can come as like an enlisted human guy and you make it into their human program. They'll make you a warrant officer and then they'll send you to the farm. That's the only good thing you can do with Great Skills. Everything else, especially if you're a singing guy, oh my God, stay away from that place. Avoid that place like the plague. I mean, it is like one of the worst run organizations, one of the worst concepts, and everybody who goes there hates their life. So that's a piece of advice. Should get that out to everybody. I mean, it's horrible. Luckily, I was able to see it from afar, and then I met a bunch of people who were actually there, and everybody just confirmed that. They're just like, these were guys who were in the unit in Great Skill program at that time, and that everybody was like, I probably met like 13 guys. Every single one was like, it is horrible here. Do not come here. We hate our lives. So, Delta or ISA. If you could, my recommendation, if you had to choose one organization or the other, all right, just from a level of professionalism, I think Delta is overall a better organization. They're way more professional. I would say both ISA and SEAL Team 6. Obviously, you're not in the Navy suit. It's not even an option. But those two organizations, there's definitely some toxic stuff that goes on in both those organizations. Jamie James, what's up, brother? I appreciate you. Thank you. Follow you on IG as well. It was interesting to hear from a person involved with you. I follow you on IG as well. It was interesting to hear from a person involved with your former unit. I appreciate that, man. You should hop on live with Nate from ValFT. You guys would have a good conversation, probably. Yeah, I don't know if I don't know how much. I think Nate's a solid guy. Nate actually was one of the first people that I talked to when I first started my YouTube channel, and he gave me some really good advice. But I don't know how much of our content styles mesh. So, but everything I know about everything that everybody talked to, everybody says Nate's a good guy, and he did give me some really good advice when I first started my channel. So, but I'm really excited to be going down and hanging out with Brent Tucker and doing the Tier 1 podcast. And then I actually have, in April, I'm really excited. I think I talked about this before. We've got a really big podcast coming. It's not Sean Ryan, but it's one of the guys who's like close to him in size. And we'll announce that later, but it's going to happen like first week of April. This definitely will be my biggest podcast interview yet. So I'm really excited about that. What about Army Operation Group? What is Army Operation Group? You also got to remember a lot of these places like change their names. So if you're hitting me with what a unit is, probably also drop what it used to be called or other aliases for those units, and then way. Jaco, was there an experience of the unit that fundamentally changed how you see people trust or human behavior, and what happened that taught you this lesson? Yes. So me personally, so anybody who ever experiences this, there are tactical units like Delta Force and SEAL Team 6, and then there's intelligence units like the CIA, the ISA. In my experience, tactical intelligence units tend to be more toxic for a number of different reasons. And everybody's trying to avoid getting in trouble. Very few people will stand up for each other. The sense of brotherhood is probably not quite as strong as it is at like someplace like Delta Force. And then what I saw when I was there was multiple examples of toxic leadership, and then there were a lot of people who were just literally who got it. There was certain individuals who they definitely had some very toxic personalities, but instead of them getting removed from the unit, they ascended, and then one in particular became a squadron command sergeant major, and this guy was known for he would find somebody he didn't like, and then he would have what they're called fuck you meetings, and he would sit down with his entire staff, which was like 8 people, including legal, and like, how can I get this guy screwed? And this guy eventually got fired for abuse of power, but it took 6 IG complaints. It wasn't until the 6th IG complaint against this guy was filed did finally somebody like, hey, there's a problem going on here. And this went on for years. And this would have been fixed sooner, but there was multiple times when people who knew what was going on didn't say anything, didn't stand up for these injustices, what was going on, and this went on. And so what disgusted me when I eventually learned about this was how many people in the unit did nothing. One of my favorite movies is Boondock Saints, and at the beginning of the movie, the 2 brothers are in this church, and but the priest is giving this sermon, and he's talking about this woman who's getting attacked. She's getting stabbed in the middle of broad daylight, and nobody's doing anything, and there's people standing around. And he says, and always remember this, the only evil greater than evil men is the indifference of good people. And I saw so many examples while I was there of the indifference of good people. And that's when it kind of culminated of a number of different things, is why I actually eventually left the unit, was because I saw so much of this. And I just didn't really want to be a part of it anymore. So I loved what I got to do there, and I'm grateful for the time that I had there. But yeah, I'm very thankful that I left when I did. And I get actually messages from people who are still at the unit, or at least was, and almost all of them were like, "Hey man, you left the unit at the right time." So amazing organization, especially from an intelligence, like literally from the intelligence side of thing. There is no better unit in the army that you could really do intelligence from. But yeah, there were some issues when I was there. I hope that answered your question, JQ. Honestly, William Barry. Honestly, the young people that join the military are more impressive than your average college grad. Yeah, I don't believe PC specifications. Oh, I got gaming computers. All right. I don't know if let me see this. All right, that's so I built this whole rig myself. All right. All right. I don't mess around. All right. I built this whole thing. Obviously, I didn't build the monitors, but I did build the PC. Right. But I've got pretty advanced graphics cards, and I got a shit ton of RAM. So, thoughts on Ground Branch? Ever met anybody from there or worked with them? Yes, actually, my very first mentor, who was my instructor at my free fall course and was my very first team leader, detachment sergeant major, he went to Ground Branch. And then he basically paved the way for all of us to go to Ground Branch. And then, yeah, so that's one of the reasons why, really amazing dude, actually a bit of a legend in the unit. And before he came to ISA and was basically our big tactical guru at the time, he was actually a former Marine Force recon guy. Okay. What's up from Michigan? What's up, Boxman? Army vet? Yes, I am. Are you? Have you ever seen the documentation on the guy who wrote and directed the Boondock Saints? I have not, actually. Is there something interesting about Azuga? You mentioned a while ago that you were at selection and you were reading a book on a certain selection, but one of the cadre told you not to read that book. What book was it, if you recall? It's called Killer Elite. So I will save you the disappointment. It is, I think, is the first book that was ever written about the unit, but it's a very dry book. And there's really like no real secrets. It just really kind of breaks down the history of the unit. I will tell you that while I was in the unit, Joint Strike, the book by Sean Naylor, I think it was, came out. And it was a book about JSOC. And I was in the unit at this time. And there's one chapter about ISA. I can tell you that chapter, I learned more about the unit in reading that one chapter than I knew about the unit, and I was there. So take that for what it is. And then I have not read Adam Gamal's book. I plan to, especially because he actually reached out to Jack Murphy, the guy, the host of the Team House podcast, and he actually told Jack to tell me that he liked my interview. So props to Adam Gamal, who wrote the unit, the latest book about the unit. Because I think his was the latest. I don't know if Joe Kent's book was later or whatever, but what do you think about the DIA clandestine service? DIA has its uses. To be honest, between the DIA, the CIA, and the NSA, there's a lot of redundant capabilities. A lot of these organizations have created their own organic everything. Like the CIA has their own version of what the NSA does, and the DI has a lot of different versions of what the CIA and the NSA does. And there's a lot of redundant efforts going on. So, and not all these organizations talk very well. So it wouldn't be such a big issue if all of them sort of work together as a network, even though they have redundant capabilities, but they don't all the time. And so sometimes they step over each other's feet. So certain agencies have certain relationships at certain times. Some were good, some were bad. Um, you know, between Iran hostage crisis, the information that was going on during 9/11 with the agency, their knowledge, their information on the hijackers, everything like that. It just, this stuff happens all the time, and it's unfortunate. 88, Mike. Oh man, what's up? So I take it you went to basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri? If remember, that's where the 88 Mikes go. Correct me if I'm wrong. Are you a Warhammer 40K guy? Beer Shark? Yes, I am, bro. I actually am Warhammer 40K since 3rd edition. I did 3rd edition. I started playing Warhammer 40K in the 90s. Diecast metal, baby. That shit was for real. And first faction I ever played, Space Wolves. No big deal. You know, it is what it is. What did you pay in total for your setup? I don't remember what I paid for the monitors. I think I paid probably, I think I built everything, including the graphics card, probably close to $2,000. I don't remember what I paid for the monitors though. And obviously I've got mics, I've got the inner ear modules or IEDs. I forget what the acronym for them is. What is the difference between ISA and Comtech? To be honest, I don't know what Comtech is. So you have to describe to me what Comtech is. Was there ever a moment when you had to make a decision with incomplete information and later realized how pivotal it was? Yes. Yeah, I was involved in we were tracking a target and we hit a target and it was a trap. And some people died. So that's why it's like very important to, anytime that you get information, especially if it's too good to hear, question it. Because your confirmation bias can lead you down some dark holes sometimes. Okay. Yeah. Kate Doom. The other name's AOG, but it's a human org under INSCOM and located at Fort Meade. So if it's an organization that is currently listed under INSCOM, it probably doesn't do much, to be completely honest. And to be honest, AOG, you know, I don't quite know. Like the only other human organization that I know in that area is the Great Skill Program, which is a section of the Great Skill Program. And that program is, like I said earlier, is garbage. Was Joe Ken ISA? Yes, he was. I never worked with him, but he was there at the tail end of it before I left. I think he came into the unit when I was leaving, around that time, I think. What did you think of simplifying SOF into one unit like the OSS? So would it cut it down, all overlap the units, ground branch, maritime branch, intelligence branch? So there's a good and a bad thing to doing this. So what ended up doing is that you had all these units that had specific jobs, but you required all these jobs to coordinate and do their own things. But the thing is, you had different commanders, you had different funding, you had sometimes different authorities, and what a lot of times units, especially like Delta and SEAL Team 6, who have all this funding, who have all these authorities, they couldn't wait, and they needed to streamline the processes. And so they started what assets that they could not rely on all the time. So they started creating them organically within the units, which definitely made them more effective. But there's this trend of now you have all these other units who are now creating their own organic intelligence. It's not as a big of an issue as it is in the military as it is in the intelligence services. Like the intelligence services outside of the military, there's definitely a redundancies of efforts. Some of it has some advantages, but there's also some disadvantages. So I don't think SOF has that problem. It's the intelligence services who are the biggest. This is the biggest problem in the intelligence services, especially with the CIA. Could a guard SF make the jump to Delta? Would having an active SIF team experience or USB make a difference? Anybody can go there. So if you are a guard, an SF guard guy, and you go there and you make it, you can go to selection without being. You can go to selection without being in the active duty. But if you make it, you do have to go. You will have to do temporary. They will make you go active duty. To go to OTC and to join the unit. So you can go to selection, you can go to CAG selection as a guard guy, but if you make it and they send you to OTC, you do have to join the active duty. Whiskey. Oh, see, there you go. Our man Brett Tucker, who I'm gonna go see here tomorrow and record with on Tuesday, did exactly that path. So they take people from other branches like Delta? Yes, they do. So while I was there, we actually had Navy SEALs. We had some Marine Force recon guys. We had a few Air Force people. Yeah, we have every branch. We actually have a lot of Marines who come in. We did have, when I was there, we had one SEAL. And I was not really a big fan of him, but it is what it is. He just had a shit-ass personality. It's good to get into the military first and start in a regular unit like the 82nd and get prepared and then submit a packet to try out for RASPL section. That's definitely, there's definitely advantages to it. My recommendation, if you can hack it, if they've got these accelerated programs like Option 40, 18 X-ray program, I say try them. Because look, if you do the 18 X-ray program, because people are like, oh, I should go 11 Bravo than do an 18 X-ray program. No, you shouldn't, because you should try to do it to 18 X-ray, and then if you fail, like you don't make it, then they just kick you down to 11 Bravo anyways. Like, what's that saying? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Why not try it? And then if you don't make it, you end up doing that job anyways. And then as long as you didn't quit, and it was like a medical thing or you just didn't meet the time standard. I don't exactly remember what the standards are letting people come back to SFAS and these other selections. I know as long as you don't quit, you have a chance of going back. But why not try it? Why not do the 18 X-ray? No, why not do Option 40? You save yourself a couple years, and the experience that you think that you will learn in the 82nd or something like that. Yeah, there's some, but you can also learn all that on the fly while you're in these units. So, yeah, I say just go straight to these accelerated programs. That's just me personally. I think you were serious. John, hello brother, how you doing? Nice to see you. It's John Boy, the Opal King. What's up, man? How you doing, brother? Hell yeah. Who's your current army? I'm Urkbor for life. Beer Shark, I honestly don't want you to even answer this question. Okay. I have 9 armies, okay? The last army I picked up was actually Imperial Knights. So I have an Imperial Knight army now. Who doesn't love mechs? You know what I'm talking about? Who doesn't love the big boys? Can SF warrants go to higher tire units? Been trying to look it up. Yes, they can. Yep. One of my missions, so we had 2 teams, and the guy who they put in charge of the 2 teams is sort of like the forward commander of the 2 teams, was an SF warrant. So yes, they do. Former Apollo 411 Bravo, currently 35 Mike, finishing DOI. My goal is to get to group and eventually try for JSOC unit. I'd appreciate any recommendation for birthright. So if you want to, Palm, if you want to go, if you can, right, go the CAG route. That would be my recommendation. If you can't do CAG, then I would then go to ISA. But I just personally, from just a professionalism level of the unit, CAG is, my personal opinion, a better unit. If you can hack it physically. If you can do the long walk and you're fast as fuck, and you can land nav, in the mountains of West Virginia, that's what I would do. But I would either go SF or I'd go Ranger. So those are the two routes that really kind of help you. Beer Shark, what's up, brother? Hey, thank you for coming tier 3, man. I appreciate you, brother. Thank you for becoming a member. Was there ever a moment when you faced a difficult choice in the field that challenged your own ethical and moral thinking, and how did you navigate it? Yes. I got to think about how I'm going to put this. There are going to be times when you're doing operations, whether it's tactical or intelligence, that you are going to do things that will either compromise assets or people, but you do them for the greater good. At least you believe is the greater good. That probably is the hardest thing to deal with, especially when it's somebody who trusted you. Yeah. There's a lot of different ways to look at it, moral, ethically. But yeah, these are things that you have to deal with. And you deal with them, everybody deals with them in their own way. So you can let it either haunt you, or you can use it as a lesson learned in how you navigate for the rest of your life, and let it, even if it was a shitty situation, let it make you a stronger person. All right. Whiskey, what's up, brother? Thank you for becoming a mirror. Welcome to tier 3. Upcoming trader, appreciate it, brother. Have a good night. Do you wish you went CAG personally? Yeah, if I could do it again and I had to go down the route, I would do it. Honestly, because of not just the professional, there's a certain personality that exists in both. There's a different personality that exists in either organization, and definitely because I was on the tactical detachment, I spent most of my time at CAG, and I definitely got along better with the members of CAG than a lot of times my own unit. And I actually got invited because I became really close to a couple people, and like one of the guys who he's no longer with us, but a guy we became really close with. His name's Chris Vallejo, and he was one of the first people who was like, "Hey man, you should come to our selection. You should just come to us." But I was, I had to make a choice. Do I do this or do I leave for flight school? And I decided that it was time for me just to try something else in my life. So if I go back in time, I would have given it a shot. I would have tried CAG selection, just because I feel like my personality always fit better there. Are there advantages of being an analyst a bit before becoming a human or SIG-enter? A little bit, but it's kind of similar to, is there an advantage of being 11 Bravo before you go 18 series, right? You have a little bit of thing, but you'll learn that job on the fly. Like SIG-enters, you're even if you're a collector, you still analyze your own work. So you do the analytical job. So I do think like there is a little, but the fact that you usually have to stay in these jobs a couple of years before you can go to the next level or to the next part of that path, I just say skip it. Just go. Just waste of time. Life's too short, bro. My personal opinion. Is the Semi-This still deploying today in conflict around the world, or is it still peacetime except what's going on right now? Yeah, so a lot of these units, like even tier 2 units, because tier 1 does so much stuff nowadays, that unless something really gets out of hand, so most of the things that go on, either the agencies handle it or the tier 1 units handle it. And anybody who's like been in group or ranger or even the normal SEALs will tell you that their op tempo has went down drastically in the last 5-6 years, maybe even more. So without the global war on terrorism, like not, the tier 2 units are not doing much outside of JSETs and exercises and stuff like that. So they're really not doing as much. But if we put boots on the ground, 75th is going to do quite a bit. I'll tell you that right now. That's like a wet dream for those guys. Thoughts on AWG when it existed? One of the first one came from there and it seemed like it was a cool unit. So I have only dealt with AWG as like a training organization. I've actually never seen AWG, me personally, do anything operationally. And I think when they were, I was still at 5th group and I hadn't came to ISA yet. So yeah, because by the time it was ISA, AWG was now like, it was a training organization. It wasn't an operational unit anymore. So how often do you use Farsi in your own life? Do you frequent Persian restaurants or read Farsi news outlets? You have to speak other languages. So I'm in the process of teaching myself Spanish right now. But I actually have a lot of close friends who here in DC who are, I have a lot of Persian friends. So I do use it. And actually the chick who does my hair, she's also Persian. One of my friends, he's Persian, and I hang out with, like I did Super Bowl Sunday with him and his Persian family and his brothers and sisters and kids, all this stuff like that. So I definitely get to use it. My Farsi is very proper, and so I know more about like reading news articles, but when we're talking colloquially and I'm talking to like maybe who's someone from the streets, I do struggle with colloquial Farsi. Can you recall a time when your team had to make high stakes decision in a very short window, and how did the dynamics between your teammates? Honestly, that happens all the time, especially at ISA. Like everything is, these are really small teams, and you're taking information on the fly. And I would say the biggest difference between tier 1 and like a lot of other units, tier 2 and stuff, is at the end of the day, it's all about problem solving. How well do you think on your feet? How quickly do you analyze information? And then how quickly when you make a decision on the fly, and then you see it through, for better or for worse. Yes, Suga, yes, this is same Chris. Chris Vallejo used to come up and visit me, so I'd go down there, we'd work together, and then he'd actually come up to DC and he'd come hang out with me. And actually, I was dating a girl at the time, and Chris and my girlfriend had a twin sister, identical twin sister, and Chris actually started seeing my girlfriend's identical twin sister. But yeah, he passed away in that car accident. People are handing hard to have money. We just print more money. That's how inflation happens, and that's not a good thing. That happened during COVID, and that's why the inflation jumped to like, what was it, like 9-something%? Beer Shark, what are you doing to learn Spanish? I've been using Duolingo transfer. So I'm doing a couple different things. I've got a couple booklets that I do, and then a couple exercises. I don't like Duolingo particularly. I've used it before, but I just don't, it's so, like the lessons are so erratic. I feel like I can't really control the pace how I want. Like sometimes there's some complicated stuff, and then sometimes there's just too simple of stuff. So there's definitely some better apps out there, but I think that there's a couple of them, the ones that make you say stuff back, like all the time. There's just a couple different programs, and everybody learns differently. Everybody learns languages differently. Me, what I need to do is I figure out the grammar, and then I learn a couple key phrases that allow me to talk around things, and then I just start learning vocabulary. So yeah. Was there an experience that unexpectedly taught you a lesson you still carry? A lot of them. I think the first and foremost is question everything. And when you hear something that goes along with your confirmation bias, like if it sounds like it's too good to be true, it probably is. Like suddenly if you've been tracking targets for like months and suddenly this really awesome piece of information just comes down, just like here's our break, question everything. Healthy skepticism is great for life. It's great for intelligence operations. It's good for relationships. It's good for interpreting news from mainstream media. You cannot go wrong by being skeptical. Let the information come at you, how it's presented, not how you want it to be. Like that goes for intelligence, that goes for life, that goes for so many different aspects. Yes, question everything. Oh, and at the end of the day, everybody has the potential to betray you, right? And not to any of their faults, but at the end of the day, you think about it, there's only one person living in your skin, and that's you. And these other people, there's only one person living in the skin. So most people are going to do what's best for them, and you can't fault them for that because you only got one life to live. You might as well do what's best for you. But if you understand that, you know, and then you won't get all butthurt about it. But then if you understand that and you're prepared for that, you know, you'll keep people at an arm's length to a certain extent. But just always know that at the end of the day, like whether it's your wife, even your kids, your parents, they're going to do probably what's best for them, you know. But, you know, so everybody you expect people to be selfish. The difference is how do you treat people in a certain, like a level of compassion while still navigating the world by looking out what's best for you. I think that's what separates good people from bad people. Beer Shark. Oh wait, I think I missed a question. Yes, I missed a couple questions. Does units like ISA or ground branch regularly train CQB, or is that mainly just Delta? No, they do. And ground branch definitely trains quite a bit, just like Delta SEAL Team 6. The tactical guys at ISA train quite a bit, but they do not train at the same level. We're definitely not shooting every single day in the ISA tactical units. Because we have, even the tactical guys are doing other stuff. Like they still have an intelligence job, right? There's a lot going on. The ISA guys, they're like a jack of all trades kind of guys. The Delta guys are a little more narrow focused on what they're doing. How will the selection process look like to Delta for 35 Mike? It's same for everybody. So you have operator selection and you have support selection. Operator selection does not care what MOS you are. Everybody goes the same selection. If you go support, that's different. There's a support selection and operator selection. Different standards. The selection is different. But if you're a cook, Green Beret, or Ranger, or you're 35 Mike, you're going to the exact same selection and you have to do the exact same things. If you go to operator selection. In your opinion, is there a more prevalent socioeconomic class in Tier 1 units? Compare the rest of the Army? Yes, but that's also because they get so much more special pays. I definitely got paid quite a bit when I was in the Tier 1, and then when I became a warrant officer and went to go fly helicopters, I took a huge pay cut. My nose is starting to itch. While I was still in the Army, I had to take posture, which I really struggled with, but also studied French, and it was not easy. But I was able to become semi-fluent. However, I learned young soon. You know, you probably get, Beer Shark, you probably learn Farsi pretty easily. Farsi is actually really easy. Grammatically, it's one of the easiest languages in the world. The only reason why people think it's hard is because it's written in Arabic text. And then once you learn, like Arabic text is like any other alphabet. There's only 32 letters. And it's just basically like backwards cursive. And once you learn it, Farsi is super easy. Are we more free if we live free than 100 years ago? Absolutely, we're more free. You know, if you look at what life was like, life sucked for everybody, you know, including men. So, like for example, just less than 100 years ago, nobody was really like taking hot showers. Like that wasn't even a thing. So, yeah. I think it was like, 100 years ago. But yeah, life is definitely better. I think that just, you know, people want to, like, always, you know, there's the victim mentality. There's people just want to complain about stuff. But when you look at perceptive and look like what life was like 100 years ago, we're definitely more free and we definitely have a much higher quality of life. What was your trainer for ISA selection like? A lot of rucking. You ruck. Because that's what almost all, if you're going to CAG selection or ISA selection, ruck. Because that's what 90% of the selection is ruck running. Especially ruck running. You need to be able to run with a ruck on. And what my personal experience and what I tell most people, and I think that's what a lot of people say, is that basically you run everything. If you have a ruck on, you run everything except uphills. So if it's flat or it's downhill, you're running it. The only thing you ever walk is uphills. Best books on building rapport. Yeah, the Dale Carnegie book is pretty good. 48 Laws of Power. I would look up my book list, but it's connected to my Google Keep. Because I don't have internet, I can't really access it. There's a couple good books about it. Oh, leadership books. What is his name? I can't think of it. The dude with the that's not even a good description. I said the dude with the glasses, but there's a couple really good leadership books out there by a couple of good leaders. Obviously, you can't go wrong with The Mission of the Enemy by Pete Blaber. Best things to do in Seattle going this weekend. I left Seattle in 2005, so I've been back there a couple times. If you haven't done the touristy things, like, hey, hit up the Space Needle, go have dinner up there. Obviously, you're going to, as long as the weather's good, you'll see Mount Rainier. It's kind of, you can't not see it. Enjoy the seafood. If the weather's nice, there's a lot of cool things to do up there. If the weather's not, that's one of the reasons I wanted to leave Seattle. It's only sunny like 3 months out of the year. So, was there ever a moment in ISA where you realized to completely misjudge the situation? Absolutely. That has happened throughout my career. But that's, if you're not trying to pursue certain things, like especially from an intelligence standpoint of view, or you're going to go down you're going to make the wrong choices at certain times. You're going to be presented with certain intelligence, and you're going to analyze it incorrectly, right? That does happen. The question is, do you correct and do you learn from that? And so this is a constant learning process. And there's a reason why, as you get better at it, you make less mistakes, but you can never always humble yourself and have a level of humility, because once you get to the point where you think you're so good that you can't make a mistake, that's when you start making way more mistakes than you ever did from before. So, all right. It is an hour and a half. I appreciate everybody. I get on a flight. I have to leave for my flight in like 4 hours. So, yeah. So I still have to record this stupid video. So I appreciate everybody. I thank you for all hanging out with me, and I will talk to you later. So everybody have a good night. And then see you again. Everybody, thanks Suga for being the awesome moderator that he is. I appreciate you, brother. Talk to you later.